folks, and welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory, and today is Wednesday, January the 13th, 2016, and I have the great honor and really distinct pleasure of welcoming to the show for the first time the CEO of First Majestic Silver and Chairman of First Mining Finance, Mr. Keith Neumeyer. Keith, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Rory, and it's great to see another day of green.
Yeah, we were talking just before we started recording that the market is actually up, and it's an unusual day.
Well, we've had more up days than down days so far this year, at least in the metal sector, which is kind of nice. I know the major markets have been having some challenges, but I think that's created a bid, under the resource sector, which has just so badly been beat up over the last couple of years. And interestingly enough, if you go back to the beginning of the last cycle, 2002, it was really the crash of the major markets, particularly the Nasdaq at that time, which really started the whole bull run, the 10-year bull run in metals, and maybe it's starting all over again.
Well, we can only hope. I mean, and I'm sure that Fisher's comment, Richard Fisher, that Fed head out of Dallas, I'm sure his comments didn't hurt any either. As far as him coming out and admitting that that QE was the whole program was designed specifically to pump up the stock market, and now it's going to start correcting because they're not doing that anymore. So whatever it takes, I'm happy. I'm happy on these green days, and with silver in particular going up and gold going up as well. I'll take all that we can get. And I want to tell you, Keith, that I hold you in very high regard and have an enormous respect for you, because you are one of the very few people that have openly criticized the COMEX. And do you believe, or are you aware of any of the other silver mining operators who have taken up your call to hold back some of their product to hopefully make some changes, to force some changes on the COMEX? Or are they just too deep in with the bankers?
Well, I don't know if they're deep in with the bankers or not. I think that's a little bit more on the conspiracy side of things. I just think it comes down to, most mining CEOs, aren't finance guys, and they just don't understand the metal. They don't understand what they're selling, and they don't understand the importance of the product they're selling. They look at their business as simply just a rock moving business, and they're and that's really about it. I look at silver as a very strategic metal, and
yes,
and I think that's kind of unique out there. And the human race has never been using as much silver as we're using today, and the supplies are being depleted very quickly, and we're mining at only a 10-to-1 rate, compared to gold, and we're trading at an 80 almost 80-to-1 rate, and above ground supplies are dwindling, and mine supplies dropping, and grades of all mines around the world are dropping, and people just aren't getting it. We're not seeing it show up in the price yet, but we will. And I just think some other, unfortunately, executives that run these companies, don't have the same views that I do of the metal.
Fair enough. And just to be clear, when I said that they may be in too deep with the bankers, mining is very capital intensive, and I know that in order for some of the mining operations to operate, they have to acquire capital, and in order to do that, they have to get in bed with the bankers, and that's more what I was referring to, not necessarily any kind of conspiracy that they're working with them or in collusion to keep the prices down or anything like that. Because that's
And I could tell you that mining companies do get calls from banks, and the banks do encourage the mining companies to hedge their metal. I know what happens. It happens to us, and they don't bother us very much because they know my opinion, and I'm a lost cause when it comes to them. But if I wasn't I'm sure I'd be a nice revenue stream for them, if we were one of those hedgers.
Well, I'm glad you're on the side of right, on the right side of the fence. And
Mhm.
just learned yesterday from Louis Camarasono, operates a website called Small Gold, and he reported that the U.S. Mint had a record opening day for Silver Eagles with 2.756 million Silver Eagles sold in one day, which is higher than than every month of January from 1987 to 2009. And as we were just been discussing, Keith, the mining operations are they're in trouble. And if the wholesalers and the authorized dealers are buying in record numbers, who are they selling to? Are they selling to sovereign nations, or are they selling to bullion banks, or who are they selling? Where are all these eagles going, do you think? Or do you have any idea?
Well, there's two comments I'd like to make. One is that as a result of that demand, um, the United States is actually now a net importer of silver. In other
Yes.
words, the mines within the United States used to be able to supply enough silver internally for whatever they needed it for, whether it's electronics or whether it's coins. Now that's flipped, whereby the United States is now an importer of silver, which is quite different. We have not seen that on record, as far as I know. Um, and where's this silver going? It's a very interesting question, because we have firsthand experience, because we do sell silver coins and silver bars on our website, and
Yes.
our premiums are about the same, as everyone else. We may be more expensive than others, and we probably are cheaper than others. So we're probably about in the middle of the cost for individuals to buy our silver, and yet the silver sales are down dramatically. So we know that the retail buyer is just gone. They're very few retail investors are buying metal right now. The buyers of metal, as far as I'm concerned, is institutional. Because if you go into the stores, whether it's in Europe or the United States, I've been in many of these retail stores myself, and they're not full of people. I heard from David Morgan just a week ago, whereby he said one of the dealers that he knows quite well is basically selling all their silver to 5 customers. He couldn't identify who the customers were, obviously, but
Right.
the buyers are very specific groups, whether they're high net worth or whether they're institutional. I don't know, but it's definitely not your average person on the street.
Well, my patterns haven't changed. So, I mean, just speaking for myself, and we know that, or we can look back, I should say, at 2008 when everything cratered. And I just interviewed Jeff Nielsen over at Bullion Bulls Canada just a couple of days ago, and he had done some analysis showing where we weren't able to get silver at all in the Western world, but yet India in 2008 had one of their largest ever imports of silver. I mean, and it seems like that India and China in particular, they're not having any issues at all with getting whatever they want and however much they want. I mean, how is that? How is there such a dramatic difference in ration sales in the West and an open spigot in the East? I mean, how is that even possible?
It's a very good question, and you the supply demand, and I haven't seen the 2015 numbers yet, but we know the 2014 numbers. We were in a deficit of about 120 odd million ounces of silver, so we consumed more than what was available on the market, and where does that silver come from? It comes recycling. It comes from investment hoards. They're obviously it's come from somewhere. So, but at the same token, you had 5 billion ounces of silver on the surface of the earth back in the mid 80s, and today that number is down to about 1 billion ounces, and most of the identifiable silver is in the big ETFs, and at a tune of about 700 million ounces. So we know that the above ground supplies have diminished dramatically over that period of time, and we also know that we're consuming more silver than we ever have as a human race, and as we electrify the planet and more and more, and as nations electrify themselves and become part of the Western world, they need huge amounts of silver, and of course other metals as well. But silver is a very strategic part of that because it makes up so much of our daily life, and so that's not going to reverse. This billion ounces is going to be a smaller number this year as a result, because we're in a deficit in 2015. We just don't know the exact numbers yet, and we're going to be in a deficit going forward, and that's going to show up in price eventually.
Well, we can only hope that it's more sooner than later. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with what's going on in China and India, but both of those countries have these massive solar infrastructure programs going on.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
I'm sorry.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
See, I mean, and the question that you were asking is the question that I've been asking for close to 3 years, and where is this metal coming from? Now, if you've got China and India who have vowed to place 100 gigawatts of solar electricity throughout both of those nations, that is an enormous amount of solar, which requires there's no alternative for any of the silver that's used in that solar production at this point. I mean, how in the world is that going to happen when we know that the mining production, just as you just stated, has been running in a deficit for the past several years, and finally, the GFMS finally recognized that fact that there is in fact a deficit. And I believe you just said there was 120 million ounces for last year or 2014. I mean, that's a lot. That's a big number. I mean, how are these nations going to be able to move forward with these programs along with all of the medicine that's now made, all of the technology that requires silver that there's no substitution for, and on top of all of that is this just gargantuan, ever-growing investment demand. How are these? How are the mining companies going to be able to supply all of this when they're closing down or slowing down?
Well, that's my entire thesis for putting together a silver company in the first place. And I looked at the supply demand fundamentals of the metal 10 years ago, or 13 years ago now, when I put first Majestic together, and that supply demand fundamental story, just was so compelling that, and it's taken longer than I had thought. We did see, obviously some nice prices a few years ago, and we've seen a retracement, but this retracement's hurt supply, and and then deficits aren't going away, and silver is going away, and
Exactly.
that's why I look, and I'm on record saying I think triple digit silver is going to happen, and when I say that, I mean it's going to happen, not 100 years from now. I mean, like this is gonna happen. Like it has to happen because it is such an important metal, and it's just taking time, and it's hard to, determine the bottom of any market. But I know for myself that this is back up the truck time. This is decade, once in a decade opportunity, and possibly once in a multi-decade or lifetime opportunity where you can buy equities, mining stocks that are just so badly beaten up, and the metal itself. If people don't want to buy mining stocks, just buy the metal. You do very well. But for my money, I like buying companies. I like buying the stocks because the stocks have much higher return But of course, in a bull market, in a bear market, it can be quite difficult. But as we've seen over the last 4 years, but when you were, if silver only added a couple of dollars, like from 14 to like $16 or $17 an ounce, I would guess that First Majestic stock would double, right? And First Mining stock, would do something equally as the same. And
I
that's
would I
the
would
kind of
agree.
leverage.
I would have to agree with that. And First Mining Finance, which is your new company, and you guys acquire either distressed or closed mining operations. And
Mm-hmm.
I, I, I was telling you before, I've told Chris, the CEO over there, and Patrick Donnelly, I think he is the president, and Derek, who is the vice president of your investor relations. I've told all of them, and now I get to tell you, Keith, that business model is just, it's unbelievable. It's almost like genius, because you go in and it's a win-win for everybody. It is an absolute win-win, because the people that are in trouble because of the pricing of the metals right now, they can't get the capital. They need capital. You're offering them the capital in a way to get out, and then you're going to hold the companies, right? You're not going to go into operation in any of these companies. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. And just to take it one step further, when I put First Quantum Minerals together in the early '90s, that became obviously one of the largest copper companies in the world. And then in the early 2000s, I put together First Majestic Silver, which is now today the second largest silver producer in Mexico. And now I'm putting together my new company, First Mining Finance. So the similarity between all three companies is the fact that I'm buying assets at the bottom of the market. And when no one wants them, I'm paying pennies on the dollar for assets. And in both of my predecessor companies, I was able to capitalize on the market and as things improved over time. And two multi-billion-dollar companies were created. And it's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen with First Mining Finance, but I'm doing this for the this purpose of creating another obviously very large company. And the assets that First Mining Finance has been buying, we bought 4 companies in 2015, and then First Majestic bought one. So as a leader of 2 mining companies, I bought 5 companies in 1 year. I'm not sure how many executives have done that, and it's definitely a record for myself personally. And but I think this is the time to be buying these things, and because the values that we're going to see in the next few years, I think we'll look back at 2014 and 2015 and say, geez, I should have bought a lot more.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Because I would agree wholeheartedly. I think that what's going to happen, Richard Fisher, the Dallas Fed head, coming out and point blank saying that the stock market is now in, and these are his words, in a quote, digestive period, and that they, quote, front loaded a wealth effect into the stock market. All of that tells me that the stock market has to unwind, or is going to unwind. So those are obviously going to it's obviously going to lose value. Shouldn't some of that go into gold and silver as the stock market is coming down, or how will that work?
Yeah, we're seeing it right now. Where I'm just looking at my screen, and geez, I'm absolutely blown away that the Dow Jones is down 300 points right now, and which I actually didn't notice early in the day, and then gold, is up almost $10 here. It's up $7.70. So, the proof is in the pudding. And this happened in 2002. I remember when the Nasdaq cracked, and I remember when every single mining analyst in Canada, Canada is obviously, very heavily weighted mining. So we have a lot of our brokerage firms and banks, follow mining, and they all have mining analysts. And in the height of the bull market in tech in 2000, 2001, all these mining analysts became fuel cell analysts because, as your listeners probably remember, fuel cells were the hot thing back then. And then the banks didn't know anything about fuel cells, so they converted all their mining guys into fuel cell guys, which I thought was kind of unique. But that was the that signaled the bottom of the market, and then I witnessed the bottom in 2002 when I put First Majestic Silver together, and I saw, geez, this is definitely the bottom, because you could just see how things just got so back, and the institutions then just woke up and, geez, we got to buy solid assets. We can't be buying internet business plans anymore. We actually have to buy metal in the ground, because that's actually something we could measure and something we could touch and feel, and it's got actual real value to it. And that's what started the whole cycle over again. And I've said for the last year that we really needed a break in the U.S. market to really get the fundamental investor back into the resource sector. And I didn't predict that we're going to have almost a 5-year bear market in resources, but it's been brutal. But things do change, and the sector is just so far underwater. Where you've got some mining stocks that are down 80-90%. It's pretty hard to lose when you're buying such discounted assets. So you never know whether the market's going to go a little bit lower, and maybe it will. I don't know, but I think the bottom is in personally, and I'm willing to buy stuff now, and even if I'm wrong for a few months, even if I'm wrong for a year, I'm not going to really care, because I know what's going to happen, when things change.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, your downside risk is minimal, if any. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so and your upside gain is limitless at this point. I mean, one last question, Keith.
Sure.
Why do you do what you do?
Well, I love creating. I love creating businesses, and I've been asked that question a few times, actually. And I could decide to go sit on a beach and drink margaritas, I guess. But
Yep, you sure
um,
could.
yeah, and not that I don't do that every once in a while, but I do very much enjoy creating businesses. I've created, I don't know how many millionaires in my career, and it's in the multiples, and likely in the triple digits, and that gives me a kick. And when guys have told me that they paid off their mortgage, or they bought a new home, and or whatever, or bought a car, or made a little bit of money, that gets me excited, and that's what turns me on. So that's I'll continually do what I do until I can't do it anymore.
Well, that's a great answer, and sounds like you're surrounded by good people because you try to do the right thing, and that's usually how it works. You know?
Well, it's not all me, I can tell you that.
Uh,
And that's you hit it dead on the nail there, and surrounding yourself with good people, and rely on those people, and trusting those people, is key to success. Because if you're one guy pushing a string all day long, and no one around you is there to assist you, and or at least push the string with you, then you're not going to create the success. And you really need to be surrounded by a good group of people. And I've been very fortunate to have the people around me over my career, and a lot of credit goes to them.
well, and where's the joy in having a one person celebration? Kind of told the story. I said that was my last question. I've got one more.
Okay.
You said that you think that silver's going into triple digits. Do you think that the trigger has already been pulled on that? I'm not asking for any kind of timeline, but do you think that we're moving in that direction at this point, or do you see more downside in the silver market?
Yeah, it's such a tough question because quite frankly, I've been wrong for the last couple of years, and I remember when silver was hovering around $20 an ounce, 2 years ago, and I figured, okay, now this is the bottom, and
Mm-hmm.
within 2 months we were at 18, and I've had to re-engineer First Majestic, I think three or four or five times in the last 4 years, and when I mean that, I mean laying off people, bringing efficiencies in, bringing automation in, changing our cost structures, and it's been quite a challenge to bring our costs down to where they currently are, whereby we could actually start making a profit, at current metal prices. And I'm touching wood and praying that we the bottom is in. I think it is, based on my experience. I came from I was a trader at the banks back in the 80s, and I think I've got a pretty good feel for the overall market. I think I'm a pretty good buyer, and the market looks to me like it's bottoming and creating a good solid base here. And I think upside it is coming, and I think the bottom is in. But I could be wrong again, but I'm pretty certain that we're going to see higher metal prices at the end of 2016 than we currently have. But it's likely going to be a choppy ride, but it's not going to go straight up, I don't think. It rarely ever does. But I think it's just going to come down to supply-demand fundamental. I think that
Yeah.
more and more people will start to buy into the fact that this is actually a very important, silver is actually a very important metal. It is actually strategic, as I say it is. And that story will, people will start waking up. When people talk about platinum, they say, oh, platinum's so important because it's used in automobiles, platinum, and people talk about, there's such an important use of platinum in automobiles, and quite honestly, I think it's a joke because the silver catalytic converter, is there and it's coming, and I think it'll replace, platinum catalytic converters. So, on top of solar cells, on top of battery technologies, on top of robotics, on top of computers, cell phones, all this stuff that we're doing, Wall Street, Bay Street is going to look at this and say, Jesus, we've been mispricing this metal for all these decades, and we misunderstood the importance of this metal. And then metal and silver will re-rate itself, and that's when people are going to really start to see a lot of the price action that we've been expecting to see over the last decade.
Yeah, I mean, silver is the second most used commodity in the world. I mean, it's second only to oil. I mean, it's in everything. You know, it's not as prolific as oil, but it's pretty darn close, and it's a necessary element to everyday life on this planet at this time. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's just that simple, and I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, that it is going higher. It has to because of the supply demand fundamentals. Just based on that, I mean, if you know anything at all about what's happening with the mining sector right now, you know that mining is really almost a no lose situation. I mean, I can't say that it's a no lose situation because obviously things can change, and I could be very wrong. And I'm not an advisor, a financial advisor, so um, I just know that I'm not that stupid that I can't see what's right in front of me. You know, so but we've been speaking with Mr. Keith Neumeyer. I'm very honored to speak with. And Keith, why don't you give them tell folks how they can get in touch with you and check into your stocks and
Sure. Okay. Well, First Majestic Silver trades on the New York Stock Exchange. The trading symbol is AG. The website is simple, just www.firstmajestic.com. And First Mining Finance trades on the OTC Bulletin Board in the U.S. Under the symbol FFMGF. It's also trades in Canada. Both companies also trade in Canada as well, but those are the trading symbols in the United States. The website is simple again, just the name, www.firstminingfinance.com. People can tweet me or add me to their tweet list. It's just at Keith_Neumeyer, just my full name, KEITH_NEUMEYER, Neumeyer. And I'd be happy to receive tweets from people, and that's about it.
Well, all right, and I'll put all those links in the about section underneath the video so that they can get in touch with you and follow you on
Sure.
Twitter and go take a look at your stock and head on over to First Majestic and pick up a coin or a bar or two.
For sure. And
So,
if any of your listeners have questions, they can phone both companies and just ask for investor relations, and Todd Anthony or Derek Iwanaka are available to answer any questions.
Derek Iwanaka, he's a fine young man. He's an asset to your company. So
Yeah, good guy.
he is a good guy. And Keith, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope that we can do this again in the not too distant future.
Okay, well, thanks very much for your time, all right?
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
You too.